I should have felt joy that morning, the kind of effervescent joy brides are supposed to feel when everything finally aligns. But all I remember now is the smell of wilted lilies and overheated perfume drifting through the air. The dressing suite at the Alderbrook estate shimmered with white light pouring through the skylight. Racks of bridesmaids' gowns lined one wall, and a stylist was smoothing the last crease on my veil. I was 32. On the edge of the day, everyone said would crown my life. And yet I couldn't shake a small, irrational unease humming somewhere deep inside my chest. Breathe. Mara. Alina murmured, pinning a wisp of hair back into place. She'd been my anchor through the 6-month whirlwind of planning calm. Efficient. The sort of friend who solved crises before I even registered them. I smiled in the mirror. I'm breathing. Just thinking about the catering schedule. You mean overthinking? She said, half teasing, half concerned. Outside the open window, the garden speakers were testing the instrumental playlist. Soft acoustic guitar floating between the maples. 200 guests were already taking their seats. Every spreadsheet in my phone said the day was flawless. Still, unease lingered. Thin and persistent, like the whine of a monitor left on. I tried to brush it off as nerves. Damon was a good man, ambitious. Composed. Adored by nearly everyone he met. We'd met at a healthcare tech symposium 3 years earlier. He'd sat in on my UX presentation. Lingered afterward with questions about human-centered design. And by the end of that night, I was certain I'd met someone who actually listened. Damon's company, Ale, Pike Consulting, had clients nationwide. People called him visionary. I called him steady. Until recently, at least, a notification blinked on my phone. Alderbrook Cloud Sync video upload. Complete 12 files. For a second I frowned. Puzzled. The estate security package automatically uploaded ceremony footage for couples, but that wasn't supposed to start until the event began. Curious. I tapped the link. A list of short clips appeared timestamps starting an hour ago. The latest read, 1141 a.m., Service Corridor Cam 2. My finger hesitated. I told myself it was just delivery staff or decorators. But something maybe instinct. Maybe dread made me tap play. The screen filled with grainy motion sensor video. 2 figures stepped into view near the catering doors. The angle caught only partial profiles. Yet I recognized them instantly. Damon's dark blue suit. The custom tailoring I'd paid for. The shorter man beside him. Unmistakably Rowan. His operations director and best man. They were close. Too close. Damon's hand lifted to Rowan's face in a gesture that was intimate. Practiced. Then, clearly, inevitably, the 2 men kissed. My breath left me in one sharp exhale. The phone slipped from my fingers onto the vanity. Still glowing. Alina turned at the sound. Mara. What happened? I couldn't speak. The world narrowed to the faint buzz of the clip ending and looping again. Alina stepped closer. Saw the screen. And froze. Oh my God. The silence between us expanded. Heavy. Absolute. Outside. Laughter floated up from the garden. Oblivious. I forced air into my lungs. Picked up the phone. And watched the timestamp again. 1141 a.m. Less than an hour before the ceremony. Alina reached for my arm. We can stop this. Say you're sick. Delay anything. You don't have to go through with it. I shook my head slowly. Not yet. I need to think. In the mirror, I saw a stranger face pale against the lace. Eyes too calm. Rage hadn't arrived yet, only clarity. Damon hadn't stumbled into a mistake. He'd built a double life right under the glow of our engagement photos. My first impulse was to run. The second, colder one, was to understand. I scrolled further through the file list. Earlier clips showed the same hallway Damon entering at 1058. Rowan following minutes later. They'd done this more than once. Save these, I said quietly. What? Download them. Every clip. And make backups to a separate drive. Rename them Florist Prep or something harmless. Don't tell anyone. Alina's hands trembled as she complied. Mara, Are you going to confront him? Yes, I said, but not like this. I remembered the rehearsal dinner toast Damon had given last night, how he'd promised to protect our partnership with transparency and truth. The words now rang with venomous irony. Alina whispered, "Do you want me to call your mom?" No. She'd rush in here crying, and I'd break. Then what's the plan? I'm not sure yet, but I won't walk down that aisle pretending. The florist entered briefly to deliver bouquets. Oblivious to the storm brewing, I forced a smile, thanked her, waited until the door closed again. My phone buzzed a text from Damon. "You ready? Love, 15 minutes. I stared at the message until it blurred. Then I typed back, almost. Alina's eyes searched mine. "Whatever you decide. I'm with you." I nodded, grateful beyond words. "Find the estate coordinator. Tell her I need the central monitors in the reception hall available. Just say I want to test a surprise slide for the toasts, and please keep quiet." She hesitated only a second. "Got it." When she left, the silence returned, thick as fog. I sat at the vanity, fingers laced, heartbeat steadying into something fierce. I thought of every night Damon stayed late reviewing budgets with Rowan, of the sudden business trips, the guarded phone calls that ended when I entered the room. I dismissed them all because love had made me reasonable. Love, I realized, had been the perfect camouflage for deceit. A soft knock startled me. My mother's voice floated through the door. "Sweetheart, they're lining up. Are you ready?" "Almost." "Mom," I called, forcing steadiness. 2 minutes. I waited until her footsteps receded, then stood. The mirror reflected a bride still intact, veil cascading, bouquet trembling slightly in her grasp. I slipped my phone into the clutch beside me. The clips now backed up to Alina's drive and drew a slow breath. When I finally stepped into the hallway, everything looked dreamlike. Distant the gold-trimmed mirrors, the waiting bridesmaids, the muffled hum of guests beyond the doors. My father turned, eyes misty. "You look beautiful." "Kiddo." "Thanks." "Dad." We began the walk toward the ceremony canopy. My mind was split in two, one half, moving through the ritual, the other rehearsing the sequence of truths I would unleash later. The guests rose as the music swelled. Damon waited at the altar, radiant in performance. Rowan stood beside him, hands clasped, gaze lowered. Each step felt like crossing a fault line. I could almost hear it crack beneath the silk of my gown. At the midpoint of the aisle, Damon's eyes met mine. He smiled sincere, unguarded, believing the show would continue. For a heartbeat I nearly faltered. The old habit of protecting him twitched inside me. Then I remembered the corridor footage, his hand cupping Rowan's cheek, and the weakness hardened into steel. When we reached the dais, my father squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Proud of you. Always." He placed my hand in Damon's and stepped back. Damon's palm was damp. "You're shaking," he murmured. "Am I?" I said softly. "Maybe it's just the lights." The officiant began his practice speech about love and commitment, words flowing over me like static. The audience sighed. Chimeras clicked. Petals drifted. Damon repeated his vows flawlessly. When it was my turn, I smiled and delivered the lines I'd rewritten in my head seconds earlier. "Damon," I said, "I promise to honor truth above illusion, to trust only what stands in daylight, never in corridors." A ripple of confusion moved through the guests. Damon laughed lightly, assuming nerves. The officiant continued, oblivious, and soon pronounced us husband and wife. Applause thundered. We kissed a stage kiss. Nothing more, and the crowd erupted in cheers. As we recessed down the aisle, I caught Alina's subtle nod from the side door. The monitors were ready. My stomach knotted, not from doubt, but from the weight of what honesty would cost. During the cocktail hour, I smiled mechanically through congratulations. Damon's arm circled my waist, his charm effortless. "See," he whispered. "Perfect day." "Perfect," I echoed. tasting bitterness. Inside, staff were arranging the reception hall, long tables under chandeliers. A projection wall displaying our monogram M+D. At my cue later, that monogram would vanish, replaced by truth. Alina appeared with a discreet thumbs-up systems tested. Filis que with. My heart pounded once. Hard. The plan was set. I wasn't seeking spectacle. I was claiming clarity. For a moment, guilt pricked at me over Margaret and Alan. Damon's parents who'd been nothing but kind. Over guests who'd flown across the country. Over the quiet florist who'd have to witness chaos. But the alternative silence felt like dying in slow motion. When the coordinator announced dinner, we took our seats at the head table. Toasts began. My father spoke first, tender and proud. Then Rowan rose, champagne glass in hand. His voice was steady, every word rehearsed. I've known Damon since graduate school, he said. He's the brother I never had, the partner anyone would trust with their life. Damon's eyes glistened. I clenched the stem of my glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Rowan lifted his glass higher. To Damon and Mara, may your honesty be as bright as your love. Honesty. The word landed like a gavel. The room applauded. I stood. Thank you. Everyone. I began. Voice level, carrying easily over the speakers. Before we continue, I'd like to share something special. A little behind-the-scenes footage from today. Something that captured the essence of transparency. Alina moved to the control console. Damon turned toward her. Confusion, flickering. Wait, what is this? He whispered. Just watch, I said. The chandeliers dimmed. On the projection wall, the looping estate logo faded into a grainy black and white frame, the service corridor timestamp reading 1141 a.m. Gasps rippled as the figures appeared blurred at first, then sharpened. Damon's suite. Rowan's profile. The unmistakable kiss. A single second of silence, then chaos. For several endless seconds. Nobody moved. The hall's silence was so dense I could hear the clink of a dropped fork echo against the marble floor. Damon's face drained of color. Rowan froze, his champagne glass halfway raised. Then murmurs erupted, disbelieving. Scattered gasps that swelled into a wave of shocked voices. I stood perfectly still, microphone in hand. My pulse thundering, but my voice steady. This, I said quietly, was recorded by the venue's automated security feed less than an hour before our ceremony. I didn't want to believe it either. But the truth doesn't wait for permission. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Margaret Damon's mother covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Damon surged to his feet. "Mara, turn it off. Please, this isn't what it looks like." My lips curved faintly. "Then what is it?" "Damon. Because I'm sure everyone here would love an explanation." He stepped toward me, hand outstretched, desperate to reclaim control. I took a single step back. The distance felt symbolic. "Let's skip the performance," I said softly. "We already played our parts at the altar." Behind him, Rowan's chair scraped backward. His face was ghostly white. "Mara," he began, voice cracking. I didn't mean I raised a hand. "Stop. You've both had plenty of time to mean things. Today is mine." The murmurs grew until the hall was a sea of noise questions, disbelief, even laughter from guests too uncomfortable to stay silent. The screen flickered again, looping the brief footage. I caught Alina's eye near the control booth. She nodded subtly, ready to cut the projection at my signal. I took a breath, steadied the tremor in my hands, and addressed the room. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate what should have been a partnership built on honesty. I'm sorry you had to see this, but if you know me, you know I don't bury truth to save appearances." Margaret stood, voice shaking. "Mara, please think of the families, the guests. I am thinking of them," I said, not unkindly. "They deserve reality, not theater." Damon's father, a tall man with the same angular jaw, looked furious but said nothing. Damon turned toward him. desperate for backup. But the older man's face was stone. "This is humiliating," Damon hissed. "You're making a spectacle." "No," I said quietly. "You made a spectacle when you chose deceit over decency." The weight of his shame filled the space. Then, calmly, I lifted my glass. "To truth," I said, and took a sip. "To every woman who's been told to smile through betrayal." I set the microphone down, nodded to Alina. The screen went black. Then I walked out of the hall. The corridor outside smelled of roses and wine, a dissonant perfume over the echoing chaos behind me. I could hear voices rising. Cher scraping. Margaret sobbing. Alina caught up quickly, clutching the laptop that had held the footage. "Mara, oh God. Are you okay?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will be." We ducked into a smaller reception lounge, unused. Kiet. My phone buzzed with messages piling in already. Damon's name flashed again and again. I silenced it. Alina exhaled shakily. "I can't believe you did that in front of everyone." "Neither can I." He sank into a chair, the adrenaline crashing through me. But it felt clean, like ripping something poisonous out before it spreads. She gave a nervous laugh that was half a sob. "You're the calmest person I've ever seen in a disaster. I think I'm too shocked to fall apart yet." I stared at the blank monitor on the wall. Part of me wanted to cry until there was nothing left. Another part was busy cataloging next steps, lawyer. Annulment. Financial separation. Survival instincts over sentiment. Outside, the faint thud of music restarted someone, trying to restore normalcy for the guests. The absurdity made me laugh under my breath. Alina sat beside me. "Do you want me to take you home?" "Not home," I said. "He'll go there first. I'll stay at your place tonight." She nodded. "Done. I'll pack your things." Before she left, she hesitated. "Mara, you know they'll talk about this everywhere. I'm counting on it." When she was gone, I allowed myself one small moment to shake. My hands trembled so violently I had to press them flat against my knees. But even through the trembling, a quiet resolve was taking root solid. Rational. The door opened. Damon entered. He looked wrecked, tie askew. Eyes wild. "Mara, please. Let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain." "It was he faltered. It was a mistake. I got scared. And scared people tell the truth. Damon. They don't plan ceremonies and kiss other people before walking down the aisle." He raked a hand through his hair. "I love you. I swear I do. Rowan and I, it wasn't what you think. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I said coldly. "It's cowardly." He flinched. "You're destroying my life." I stood, met his eyes. "No, I'm refusing to let you destroy mine." For a second, he looked as if he might cry. Then anger replaced guilt. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. Do you realize what that does to my business? To our reputation. Our reputation ended the second you lied." I replied, "Whatever happens next is consequence, not cruelty." He opened his mouth, but no words came. I brushed past him, leaving him standing amid the scent of crushed roses. That night, Alina's apartment became triage headquarters. She'd already transferred the footage to 2 encrypted drives and hidden them under labels like floral inspo and budget sheet. "Smart," I said. "If he tries to wipe the originals from the cloud, we'll still have proof." She frowned. "You're already thinking about court, yes? If I don't move fast, he'll try to control the narrative. I need legal standing before he rewrites history." I texted the only attorney I trusted, Renee Park, the corporate counsel from my company who'd once handled a contract dispute for me. "Urgent personal matter. Need to discuss in the morning. Confidential." Then I turned off notifications, sank onto the couch, and stared at the city lights outside. Every corner of my mind wanted to collapse, but a stronger part refused. The damage was done. What remained was how I would define it. When dawn spilled pale light across the living room, he hadn't slept. Alina brewed coffee, the smell grounding me. She hesitated by the window. You could still just walk away. You know, no lawsuit. Just disappear. I could, I said. But he's done this before. Her eyes widened. How do you know I don't yet? I admitted. But people who lie that smoothly don't improvise at once. Renee's office sat in a minimalist tower downtown. All glass and muted steel. She ushered me in without preamble. You look like you've been through a war, she said, gesturing to a chair. I think I have. I told her everything from the notification that morning to the public reveal. She listened silently, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back. Good instinct saving those files, she said. You've preserved a verifiable evidence chain time-stamped. Metadata intact. I wasn't thinking evidence. I admitted. Just truth. Often the same thing, she replied. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. Here's what we can do. File for annulment on the grounds of fraudulent inducement. He misrepresented himself and entered the marriage under false pretenses. Will that hold up with supporting proof? Yes. And if his motive ties to financial benefit, joint accounts. Business leverage. It strengthens your case. That word financial made something click. I remembered late-night conversations about debt, about how his consultancy had temporary liquidity issues. I'd brushed it off, proud of being the supportive partner. Now it all gleamed with new meaning. Renee, I said slowly. He kept asking about merging accounts before the wedding. He said it was standard. I said we'd do it after the honeymoon. He wasn't happy about that. Her eyes sharpened. Good. That means your personal funds are untouched. I think his company is in trouble. Then that's our motive. She began drafting a list bank statements, business filings, any communication about money. We'll also need witness corroboration. Anyone who can testify to his relationship with Rowan predating the wedding. Rowan's not exactly eager to confess. Renee smiled thinly. He might, if we find leverage. He blinked. Leverage someone else he's hurt. You'd be surprised how quickly patterns appear when one lie surfaces. Her confidence steadied me. I signed the retainer agreement, hand shaking only slightly. As I left her office, the early afternoon sun glared too bright on the pavement. People on the street were laughing, holding coffee cups, living uncomplicated lives. For the first time, I realized mine would never look simple again. That evening, back at Alina's, I started combing through old emails. Patterns emerged: evasive replies about finances. Strings of calendar invites labeled client strategy private, all including Rowan. Every message pulsed with irony. One email stood out, dated 6 months earlier. Subject line: Project Ascend. Confidential. Damon had written, once merger funds clear. We'll stabilize cash flow. Until then, your discretion means everything. Renee's words echoed. You'd be surprised how quickly patterns appear. Before midnight, Alina found a new angle. Look at this, she said, scrolling through LinkedIn. Someone commented on Damon's company post an ex-employee named Eleni Vargas. She left a weird remark months ago. Wish I'd seen the fine print before signing anything. I felt a yacht. Message her. We sent a cautious DM from my account. Hi, Eleni. This is Mara Ellis. You don't know me, but I think we might share something in common regarding Damon Hale. Please let me know if you're comfortable talking. To my surprise, she replied within minutes. I've been waiting for someone else to say his name. Call me tomorrow. I stared at the message, heart hammering. Alina, I whispered. This isn't just personal anymore. She nodded grimly. It never was. Morning came with drizzle and exhaustion. I met Eleni at a Kia cafe across town. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a trench coat that looked more armor than fashion. I saw what happened at your wedding, she said without preamble. Someone uploaded a clip before it got taken down. Brave move. I winced. I didn't post it. I know. But someone did. and it forced me to stop pretending my own experience was isolated. She stirred her coffee. I was engaged to Damon 4 years ago. He ended it suddenly. Said he wasn't ready for marriage. 2 months later, I found out he'd used my name to co-sign a short-term business loan without telling me. Said he needed it for tax reasons. Promised to pay it off. He did, but barely. I stared. That's illegal. She gave a bitter laugh. Not if you can prove consent. He had forged digital authorization. I didn't fight it. I just wanted out. Her eyes softened. When I saw the footage of you, I realized he's still the same man, just bolder. Would you testify? In a heartbeat. She said. But I have something better. She slid a flash drive across the table. Emails. From when he begged me not to report him. You'll see he admits to manipulating people to keep his company alive. I took the drive carefully. You kept everything. Some lessons teach paranoia. She said. Use it. As she left, a strange gratitude washed over me. I wasn't alone in the wreckage Damon had built. There were others, maybe more than we knew. By evening, I was back in Renee's office. She examined the emails on Eleni's drive, eyes lighting with professional satisfaction. This is gold, she said. He admits deception and motive. Combined with your footage, it's airtight. She outlined next steps. Formal notice of annulment. Restitution claim. Subpoena for Hale and Pike financials. If his company's in arrears, we'll find proof. Alina joined us midway through, still pale from the whirlwind. Renee looked up. You're the witness who managed the media system. Yes. Excellent. You'll provide affidavit of authenticity for the video chain. I almost laughed at how clinical it sounded, affidavit of authenticity for something born of heartbreak. When the meeting ended, Renee handed me a folder. Prepare yourself, she warned. He'll fight. Men like him always do. I'm ready, I said. But later, lying awake on Alina's couch, I wasn't sure I believed it. The headlines had already begun. Bride exposes groom's secret during reception. Anonymous accounts dissected every second of the leaked video. Some praised me, others called me vindictive. I stopped reading after the first 100 comments. Alina muted my phone and set it face down. Don't feed on strangers' opinions, she said gently. You lived it. That's enough truth for one lifetime. Still, when I closed my eyes, I saw the image loop again and again, 2 people hidden behind a service door, rewriting my future in a kiss that lasted 5 seconds. The next morning, Renee called. He lawyered up. She said, Predictable. They're threatening defamation unless you retract public claims. I didn't make any. True. But perception equals publicity. Let them bluff. They can't erase video metadata. She paused. There's one more thing. I traced one of the lender filings Hale and Pike owes over $300,000 to an investor group. Covenant breach pending. That's why he rushed the wedding. My throat tightened. He married me to save his business. Not to love you, she said softly. To leverage you. The truth landed like a physical blow, sharper than the betrayal itself. That evening, I opened my old wedding journal, a leather-bound book filled with swatches and dreams, and tore out the page titled Our Future Home. Beneath it, I wrote instead, Phase 1 Evidence, Phase 2 Exposure, Phase 3 Freedom. Then I closed the book. 2 weeks later, the first hearing notice arrived. Hale v. Ellis annulment counterclaim. The envelope looked ordinary, yet I stared at it, as if it might detonate. My hands didn't shake when I opened it. They had learned their lesson in trembling. Renee called the moment I finished reading. They filed a cross motion. She said, defamation and emotional distress. Standard intimidation tactic. Ignore it. We'll respond. Her tone was so calm that I almost laughed. You make it sound like paperwork. It is paperwork. That's all his arrogance amounts to once you have proof. Proof I had started thinking of it as a living thing. Pulsing quietly in the encrypted drive, Alina kept hidden under her couch cushions. Every night before sleep, I pictured those files, the timestamp. The silent hallway. The unassailable truth that no amount of performance could erase. The world outside had moved on. But inside me, time had split. I went through motions, work emails, polite replies. The daily commute, but under everything ran the electric hum of purpose. Damon thought the scandal would fade. I would make sure it became a record. Renee assembled a precise arsenal digital forensic expert. 2 witness statements. Eleni's flash drive. And my sworn testimony, when she said, "We'll file for arbitration instead of full court." I blinked. Why not court arbitration moves faster? And Keter. Less spectacle. More results. Quieter ironic, given how loud my revelation had been. Still, the idea of something swift, clinical, appealed to me. The wedding had been public humiliation. Justice could be private and surgical. The morning of discovery review. I arrived at Renee's office early. The conference table was covered in neat folders, color-coded tabs, and a monitor displaying a chain of custody timeline. "Sit," she said, smiling faintly. "Let's go through this once before the arbitrator sees it." On screen, each step appeared like a breadcrumb trail. 1141 AM CCTV capture uploaded. 1143 AM auto cloud sync to Alderbrook server. 1202 PM backup drive, initiated by Alina Cho. 1207 PM metadata verification complete. Renee gestuurd. Unbroken chain. Multiple witnesses. They can't claim tampering. I nodded, trying to focus, but the footage looping silently in the corner caught my eye again. I forced myself to watch it without flinching. Damon, bending forward. Rovan, meeting him halfway. 2 people, certain no one could see. I keep asking myself why. I murmured. Why risk everything for 5 seconds that could ruin a life Renee studied me? Because people like him don't believe ruin is possible. They believe consequences are for others. I breathed out slowly. Then let's educate him. That weekend, Alina and I met Jonas Reed, the second witness Renee had tracked down. A soft-spoken man with anxious eyes. He had dated Damon's ex-fiancée Rowan briefly, after Damon introduced them at a networking event. Rowan made me sign an NDA. Jonas said it was about client confidentiality. Later I realized it was about him and Damon. I didn't understand until your story broke. He slid the NDA across the table. Renee would later confirm it contained language preventing disclosure of personal or reputational information. It was almost identical to one Eleni had described. Patterns on patterns. All orbiting around Damon's desperate need to hide the same truth. Alina looked at me. He's been doing this for years. I nodded. He built a company on deception, not consulting. We left the cafe under gray drizzle, silence heavy between us. At the corner, Alina squeezed my hand. You know, people think revenge is fury. But you look peaceful. I'm not peaceful, I said, just certain. The arbitration hearing took place in a small suite downtown. Neutral beige walls and bottled water lined in a row. The air smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and anxiety. Arbiter Whitfield, a woman with silver hair and an expression that could cut granite, sat at the head of the table. Damon and his lawyer occupied the opposite side. Rowan wasn't present. He'd submitted a written statement claiming professional misunderstanding. When Damon entered, he avoided my eyes. I noted the tremor in his jawline, the way his hands twisted his pen. For the first time since the wedding, he looked smaller than his reputation. Whitfield began with quiet authority. We are here to determine whether the marriage between Ms. Calmentine, Ellis and Mr. Hale was entered under material misrepresentation and whether restitution is warranted. Counsel. Proceed. Renee's opening statement was surgical precision. My client discovered incontrovertible evidence of an undisclosed intimate relationship between Mr. Relly and Hum. Hale and his business partner, recorded on the day of the ceremony. Furthermore, evidence shows financial motive. Mr. Hale's company was facing breach of debt covenant. requiring immediate liquidity. Marriage to Ms. Ellis would provide access to her joint assets and inheritance. Damon's lawyer tried to object, claiming conjecture. Whitfield waved it off. "We'll see the proof." The video played again, this time on an official monitor. Timestamp crisp in the corner. No music. No audience. Just silence and inevitability. Damon's lawyer cleared his throat. The footage lacks context. It could have been a moment of emotional support, not intimacy. Whitfield raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting an accidental kiss," the lawyer stammered. "Not precisely." Renee slid another exhibit forward Damon's email to Rowan. 2 weeks before the wedding. "Once this is finalized, we can breathe. Until then, keep us out of sight." So heater. The arbitrator's expression didn't change, but I saw the verdict forming behind her eyes. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my voice steady. I didn't come here for vengeance. I came here for truth. If I'd known who Damon truly was, I would never have agreed to marry him. He deceived not just me, but every person who believed in our union. Damon's eyes flickered up, something fragile behind them. "Mara," I cut him off gently. "Don't. You've said enough." Renee submitted Eleni's emails next. The forged loan authorization. The apology thread. Each document another stone on the scale of justice. By the time Whitfield closed the session for recess, Damon's defense had deflated into silence. Outside in the hallway, I leaned against the cool marble wall. My legs trembled, not from weakness, but from release. Alina handed me water. "You were brilliant," she whispered. I was terrified. I said, "Doesn't matter. You looked untouchable." For a moment, I almost laughed. Untouchable. Such a foreign word for someone who had once built her world around trust. But maybe that was the point. Strength didn't always look like armor. Sometimes it looked like showing up anyway. 2 weeks later, the decision arrived. Whitfield's written findings were concise. The arbitrator finds that Mr. Hale willfully concealed an ongoing intimate relationship for personal and financial gain. The marriage is hereby annulled. Mr. Hale shall reimburse all wedding expenses and compensate Mrs. Ellis for legal costs and emotional distress totaling $187. Ling ling ling. Additionally, the record of this proceeding will be made available to regulatory authorities upon request. I read it twice. Then a third time. The words didn't bring euphoria, only a deep, quiet exhale that felt like the first true breath in months. Renee called minutes later. "Congratulations. It's over." "No," I said softly. "It's finally true." But closure was never as neat as paperwork. The following days brought strange aftershocks emails from journalists, acquaintances asking for comment, distant relatives pretending to offer sympathy while fishing for gossip. I ignored them all. One evening, Alina came home to find me sorting the last of my wedding items into a cardboard box veil. Invitations. Receipts. Each object a ghost of an alternate life. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. "Donate what I can. Burn the rest." "Burn," she echoed, half amused. "Symbolic cleansing," I said, striking a lighter. We carried the box to her balcony. The city spread out below, glittering, indifferent. The paper curled, darkened, lifted into smoke. I watched until only ashes remained, then whispered, "Goodbye to illusions." Alina touched my shoulder. "You did it. Mara, you survived." "I did more than survive," I said. "I learned to choose myself." Weeks passed. I returned to work. Quieter, but sharper. Colleagues tiptoed at first, unsure how to approach the woman whose wedding had become a viral cautionary tale. Eventually, routine absorbed me again. Yet something inside had shifted, an internal compass recalibrated toward truth. When clients praised my meticulous eye for detail, I smiled, knowing where that vigilance had been forged. One afternoon, an email arrived from an unknown sender. "I know what he did to you. I have information. Attached was a single screenshot, an internal memo from Hale and Pike's financial officer referencing false statements to investors. I forwarded it to Renee without hesitation. She called within the hour. Looks like he's under investigation now. SEC picked it up. Your case opened a door. I felt no triumph, only a calm acknowledgement that the wheel was still turning. Late one evening, while walking home, I spotted a familiar figure by the river promenade. Damon stood there alone, leaning on the railing, staring into the dark water. I could have turned away. Instead, I walked closer. He noticed me, startled, then managed a hollow smile. "Mara," he said quietly, "I guess congratulations are in order." "For what?" "For winning." "This wasn't a game," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know. I keep trying to figure out the moment I crossed from love into self-sabotage. Maybe it was when you thought love meant ownership," I said. He winced. "Do you hate me?" I considered. "No. I pity you. You could have built something honest. Damon. Instead, you built a maze you couldn't escape." For the first time, he didn't argue. His shoulders sagged. "They're shutting down the company." Rowan left. "Everything's gone." "Then maybe that's justice," I said softly. We stood in silence, the wind rippling the river. I expected to feel vindication. Instead, I felt release a thread snapping quietly inside. As I turned to leave, he said, "You were always the one who saw me clearly. I just couldn't stand being seen." I paused, looked back once. That's the tragedy of men like you. You mistake exposure for cruelty when it's the only chance at redemption. Then I walked away. That night, I opened my journal again. Beneath Phase 3 Freedom, I wrote, Phase 4 Purpose. Because surviving wasn't the end, it was the start of rebuilding something meaningful. I began outlining an idea for workshops, Trust as Architecture, Rebuilding After Betrayal. A program for women to learn emotional and financial literacy before marriage. Alina offered to handle logistics. Renee promised to help with legal basics. By autumn, the first seminar filled within a week, watching a room of strangers take notes on autonomy and accountability. I felt something settle inside me. Peace, not triumph. When the session ended, a woman approached me, eyes glistening. "Your story gave me courage," she said. "I walked away from someone dishonest." I smiled gently. "Then it's already worth it." Months later, I returned to the Alderbrook estate for the first time. The gardens were the same, still too perfect, still fragrant with lilies. I walked alone to the spot where the aisle had been, now repurposed for another wedding. From a distance, I saw a bride adjusting her veil, laughter spilling into sunlight. For a moment, envy flickered, then faded into compassion. I whispered to the wind, "May she never learn the truth the hard way." Then I turned, stepping off the manicured path and onto open ground. 6 months later, my life had stopped being defined by damage. I'd moved into a small apartment above a bookstore that smelled like paper and rain, traded the sterile hush of luxury for something human, uneven floorboards, windows that stuck in summer, a cat that belonged to no one and everyone in the building. When the landlord asked my occupation, I said, "Storyteller," and realized it was true in ways it hadn't been before. The seminar series, Trust as Architecture, had taken on a life of its own. What began as a single workshop had become a traveling forum sponsored by a nonprofit for women rebuilding after betrayal and financial manipulation. I'd spent months speaking in church halls, libraries, community centers, anywhere that would host a circle of people who needed to tell their truths out loud. Each story was a mirror, different details. Same architecture of deceit, partners who siphoned savings, hid families, forged signatures. But there was something sacred about turning pain into blueprint. Every session ended with silence, then cautious laughter, then applause. Healing made its own noise. Between workshops, I kept in touch with Renee and Alina. Renee sent updates whenever new charges emerged against Hale and Pike. SEC froze the assets. She texted one morning. Rowan took a plea deal. Turned over internal files. Damon's being investigated for wire fraud. I read the message without satisfaction. Justice was grinding forward. Indifferent and slow. It no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the system. And that was enough. Alina visited often, bringing tea and unfiltered advice. You should write all of this down. You know, she said one evening. Not for revenge, just so someone else can learn faster. I already am, I said, tapping the open notebook on the counter. Working title, The Science of Betrayal. She smirked. You and your architecture metaphors, they work, I said. Even broken structures teach load-bearing truths. Sometimes, though, solitude still echoed. Late at night, I'd catch myself replaying moments the way Damon laughed during our engagement shoot. How easily I mistook performance for presence. But memory softened at the edges. Pain had stopped being an emergency. It had become a fact. Like weather. One rainy Sunday. A letter arrived without a return address. Inside was a single folded page. Handwritten in careful script. Mara, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you I left the city. I'm working construction under another name. Paying debts that will take years. Every time I see scaffolding, I think of your phrase, architecture of truth. You were right. I mistook exposure for cruelty. It was the only mercy I ever earned. I hope your life is lighter than mine. D. I read it twice. No apology could rebuild what he'd demolished, but I felt the faintest release. Closure, I realized, isn't something you grant. It's something that grows when you stop waiting for it. I burned the letter over the sink, watching the paper curl into smoke, and whispered, Goodbye, Damon. 3 months later, Trust as Architecture hosted its first national summit. 200 attendees filled the conference hall. Therapists, survivors, journalists. The opening session was mine. Standing under the stage lights, I looked out over rows of faces and saw not tragedy but resilience. My name is Mara Ellis. I began. 16 months ago, I stood at an altar built on lies. Today, I stand here because truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation that doesn't collapse. Every lie is just borrowed time, and time always collects its debt. Applause rose, steady and cathartic. In the audience, Alina wiped her eyes. Renee stood near the aisle, arms folded, proud in her quiet way. Behind them, women and men of every age nodded like they already knew. Because they did. Afterward, people lined up to speak with me. One young woman, barely 20, said, I saw your story online last year. It saved me from marrying someone like him. That means it wasn't in vain, I told her. She smiled through tears. Thank you for not staying silent. That night, the summit team held a small celebration dinner at a rooftop cafe overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, the air crisp with early autumn. Someone played soft jazz through a portable speaker. The sound of laughter drifted between tables. I felt Alina's arm link through mine. You look happy, she said. I am, he admitted. Not perfect, just peaceful. After everything, that's better than perfect. We toasted with sparkling water. She'd given up champagne after my wedding debacle, calling it bad luck bubbles. Renee joined us later, files still in hand. I can't switch off lawyer mode, she apologized. Don't, I said. You're part of the architecture too. She smiled. You know, you should trademark that phrase. It's catching on. A few days later, I received an invitation from the Alderbrook estate, the same venue where everything had collapsed. The owner had seen the viral clips and my interviews. She wanted me to speak at a new campaign promoting transparency in wedding, planning honesty from the first step. For a moment, he hesitated. The idea of returning to that place felt like walking through an old wound. But closure demanded presence, not avoidance. I accepted. When I arrived, the estate looked smaller than I remembered. The gardens had changed different flowers. Different season, but the bones of the place were the same. The manager met me at the gate. "We fixed the security system after what happened," she said with a rueful smile. "You taught us a lot about vigilance. I'm glad something good came of it," I replied. Inside the main hall, they had set up a modest stage with white drapery and a projector. Irony wasn't lost on me. I stood where the monitors had once revealed betrayal, now preparing to speak about trust. When the lights dimmed, I began. 2 years ago, this room saw heartbreak, broadcast in real time. But what I learned here is that truth, even when it shatters, builds stronger afterward. Every collapse clears space for something honest to stand. I paused, scanning the audience. The same chandeliers gleamed above, refracting light into prisms. I smiled faintly. So if any of you ever find yourselves afraid to face truth, remember it's the only thing that can't be taken from you once you own it. Applause filled the room, not thunderous, but warm, human. When it ended, I stepped down, exhaling the last of the ghosts. After the event, I wandered outside. The evening sky stretched bruised purple over the gardens. Fireflies blinked along the hedges like scattered sparks. Somewhere behind me, the cleaning crew folded chairs. I walked toward the old service corridor, the place of the original footage. The door was locked now, sealed with new security code panels. I rested my palm against the cool metal. "Thank you," I whispered, not to Damon, but to the version of myself who hadn't run away that day. The woman who had stood still in the storm and chosen truth over comfort. Without her, there would be no me. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and lilies. I turned back toward the path, feeling lighter with every step. In the months that followed, the foundation grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Universities invited me to guest lecture on ethical design and psychological resilience. A documentary crew filmed parts of my seminar series, framing it not as scandal but as transformation. They titled it Blueprint for Truth. One evening, I watched the early cut. The screen showed clips of women sharing their stories, my voice narrating in the background. We are all architects of our own peace. Betrayal doesn't destroy us. It shows us which walls were never load-bearing to begin with. I smiled. For the first time, my story no longer belonged to pain. It belonged to purpose. On the anniversary of the annulment verdict, Alina and I drove to the coast. We packed sandwiches, a bottle of sparkling water, and the old hard drive containing the footage that had started everything. The plan was simple closure ritual. Number 2. The ocean roared against the cliffs, vast and indifferent. We built a small fire pit on the sand, waited until dusk turned violet. I held the drive in my palm. It felt absurdly small for something that had once carried my entire heartbreak. "Ready?" Alina asked. "Ready." I placed it into the flames. Plastic hissed. Metal cracked. Smoke curled upward, carried away by wind. The sound was faint, almost kind. Alina watched quietly. "You sure you don't want to keep a copy?" I shook my head. "It's done its job. The truth doesn't need proof anymore. It's part of me." We sat until the fire died. Then we walked along the shore barefoot, waves licking our ankles. Somewhere behind us, the ashes of proof scattered into the sea. That night, back at the rented cottage, I wrote one final entry in my journal. Truth is not a weapon. It's light. It doesn't wound. It reveals. Those who fear it are already living in the dark. I choose light. I closed the journal and set it beside the window, where moonlight spilled across the pages. Months later, the book version of The Science of Betrayal was released. On launch day, I walked into a bookstore, my bookstore now. Technically, since I'd invested in it with part of the settlement funds and saw the cover on display, a minimalist white design, a single cracked ring slowly realigning into a circle. An elderly woman picked it up, reading the blurb aloud. A journey through deception, truth, and reconstruction. She glanced at me without recognition. "This looks powerful." "It is," I said quietly. "It's honest." When she smiled and carried it to the counter, Something inside me eased the full circle complete. That evening, I hosted a small reading at the store. Renee, Alina, and a handful of women from the workshops filled the front row. Candles flickered against the shelves. I read from the final chapter. We are never defined by the people who break us. We are defined by how we rebuild brick by brick, truth by truth. My story began in a corridor of betrayal. It ends here, in a room full of light. When I finished, silence held for a heartbeat. Then applause erupted, genuine, tender, endless. I saw tears in eyes that had once been mirrors of my own despair. I looked at my friends Alina mouthing proud of you, Renee nodding with quiet triumph, and felt the pulse of gratitude. If pain was the tuition for wisdom, I had paid in full. After the guests left, I lingered in the empty bookstore. The air smelled of wax and old pages. Outside, rain began again, gentle, forgiving. I stood by the window, watching droplets trace the glass. For the first time since that morning at Alderbrook, I felt whole, not victorious, not tragic, just human. I whispered to the quiet room, "It's over." And the echo came back soft, certain, "It's over." Then I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped into the rain.